Hi, I'm Callie from CRK Training, and today I have someone special here with me, and I wanted to share a little bit of her story and some of her insights with you. So I'm here with Wendy Murdoch.
Hi, nice to be here.
Glad you're here. So Wendy is a riding instructor, but she's a very unique riding instructor because she has a specialty in both horse and human anatomy, as well as a background in Feldenkrais. And she's published numerous books and DVDs and readers, and she uses a lot of really cool teaching tools that you wouldn't necessarily expect to be playing with when you go to a riding lesson. So we have Ned the Skeleton, and we've got some pads, some balance pads and pods. So Wendy, could you start with maybe just sharing a little bit about your story and what led you into all of this?
Sure. So I have a bachelor's degree in animal science. I went to the University of New Hampshire. And I've always been around horses. I've always had a love for horses. There was a horse on my first birthday cake. So I'd ridden up into college and that sort of thing. And then I graduated and I went to work at a university doing research. But I really wasn't happy not being around horses. So I wound up going back to graduate school at the University of Kentucky to get my master's degree in equine reproductive physiology. There was lots of jokes about one warm arm. But while I was there, it was a really cold winter too. While I was there, I was managing an event barn, and we had gone down to Georgia and picked up 5 horses and brought them back. And I thought I was going to be a tough event rider. That's what I wanted to do. And so one of these horses, I'd seen someone else ride, and I knew the horse would rear. And I got on the horse, and we were walking, and it reared up and hit me in the face. And because you got to be tough, I stayed on. Well, the second time he reared, he flipped over backwards, and if he'd rolled to the right, he wouldn't have touched me, but he rolled left. And he punched my femur through my hip socket and broke out 2 pieces of my hip socket on the left. And then when he got up, he kicked me between the legs and put a horseshoe bruise right between my legs. And broke my pelvis on the other side. So I was scooped up. I had my custom boots on, believe it or not, and I made them pull my custom boots off so they wouldn't cut them off in the hospital. I mean, it's like, and then they put me in the ambulance and they took me to the hospital, and I wound up having to have surgery the next day. I have 3 pins in my left hip socket. I bruised 2 inches of the sciatic nerve, so I had nerve pain for years down to my toe. And, you know, it was pretty dramatic. So while I was in the hospital, a friend of mine came to visit me, and she brought me 2 things. She brought me a copy of Linda Tellington-Jones' newsletter for the teamwork, the Tellington-Jones Equine Awareness Method, and a copy of a little book called Illusions by Richard Bach. And the book Illusions is really about that it's all here already. You just have to put your focus on seeing what it is. And in the story, the man is, he's talking to this other guy who's saying, you know, it's all right here. And he's like, well, prove it to me. He said, well, pick something to look for. And so the guy said, a blue feather. And so he spent the day looking for a blue feather. And then finally he was sitting there, and it was on the back of a milk carton. And so it's just about focusing our lens, and instead of saying, oh, it's not there, it's like, where is it? You won't be surprised to know that Wizard of Oz is my favorite movie because she had the ruby slippers, and all she had to do was click her heels 3 times and she could go home. So I feel like that the possibilities are always there. It's that until we recognize they're there, they don't exist. So in my recovery, a year later, I studied with Linda Tellington-Jones, and I spent the next, from 85 to 93 studying with Linda. And at my second clinic with Linda, I met Sally Swift. And she's this little gray-haired lady, you know, when I was doing tail pulls on a horse, and she was like, oh, it's going all the way through the spine, you know. So I studied with her in '86 and then apprenticed with her in 1992. I'm one of 11 people to study with Sally as an apprentice internationally. And then I also worked with a lot of really amazing people, Joyce Harmon and Hillary Clayton and Bettina Drummond and John Zahorik. And so I keep searching for information that helps me build the story. Because I think when people understand, they can do what they want. And it's really just the information or the lack thereof that they need to be able to do what they want. So they didn't give me any physical therapy when I left the hospital, by the way. And this is, 32 years ago.
Yeah.
So things are really, really different now. But in some ways, I think it was my struggle to keep searching and finding things that were going to help me get better and get back on a horse. I was actually back on a horse in 6 months, a little gray pony about that big, 13 hands. And I have to say that because of my scientific background, I always run information through that filter. So if somebody tells me something about how the horse is supposed to function or what I'm supposed to do as a rider, I always look at, does this make sense with what I know about anatomy and physiology and gravity? Because gravity is the one law that we cannot escape. And so we have to learn to work within gravity, not against it. And so many riders are told to do things when they're on the horse that don't make sense in terms of the way our body functions and laws of gravity. And it's only a matter of time that something traumatic is going to happen. And so, so much of what I do is to make sure that do my best to prevent what happened to me happening to someone else.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of what's led me to this whole process.
Yeah.
It's so yeah, that's kind of how I got here.
One of the things that I love about how you teach is you always bring in new, like, we call them toys, like all kinds of new stuff. So how does that work in the learning process?
Well, it kind of goes a little bit back to the concept of Feldenkrais method. So Dr. Feldenkrais was an engineer and physicist, and he was a judo master, and he played soccer, very athletic guy, and he hurt his knee. And he went and looked at the human body and looked at the skeleton and basically rehabbed himself. And that's where the Feldenkrais method came, right? Was his combination of knowledge of physics and judo and the skeleton. And he was always looking for possibilities as opposed to limitations. And he wanted people to achieve their potential. And that's an individual, as what is it I want to do and what's my potential. And so his techniques are, there's many, many, many lessons, and they're all a little bit different, a little unique, so that you think in a slightly different way and recognize how to organize your body in a slightly different way. And so from that, what I've learned is that we might say something in one way, but if we come at it a slightly different way, somebody's going to hear that didn't hear it the way I said it the first time. And so I always tell people, I teach the same thing over and over. It's not that I change what I teach, but it's how I teach it and the tools that I use. And if I can give you one little thing or use something that is like what Feldenkrais would call non-habitual, something that you're not used to doing, but I can introduce a movement or a concept from this other angle. And then suddenly you go, oh, wait, I didn't know I could, or whatever. And then we put that back on the horse. It's like another avenue into the nervous system and into like getting you to understand something. Because we have these habits, and I think one of the strongest habits that I see is what people do with their feet and heels down. I can be sitting there with a dozen people and say heel, and everybody jams, and it's like they don't even know they've done it, right?
Yeah.
Or think about putting somebody's leg back in the stirrup and it stiffens. So these habits, and that's the nature of a habit, is it's unconscious. They're so strong that if I try to confront it directly, it's too hard in, right? It happens so fast you don't even know you've done it.
Yeah.
But if I come around from this other perspective, either off the horse or with a little constraint like a strap or something when you're on the horse, and give you a different feeling, suddenly you're like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
So can I give you a little example of a constraint?
Sure.
We're going to have you get off your chair, and let's just move this table back a tiny bit.
All right.
And just pull your chair out so that you can walk around it.
Okay.
Okay? So just walk around your chair without touching it. So here you're unconstrained, and you're nice enough to stay like in this area. But if I say walk around your chair, you could actually go anywhere, right?
That's true.
Okay. So now put one hand on the chair and continue to walk around the chair. And now we've created a constraint, and so you have to move in a different way. Notice that you have to use your legs differently. You have to kind of cross them over a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay? And now what if you put both hands on the chair and walk around it? And now your whole shoulder girdle has had to do something completely different
Yeah.
that you wouldn't have done without the constraint.
Yeah.
And so that's you can sit back down again. That's exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Is I'm saying, okay, well, I'm going to let you move in the way you move it first. So I'm going to watch. And then I'm going to add a constraint. Not something that and a constraint isn't a bad thing. It's just something that gets limited. And then see what happens. And if I don't see quite the change, well, we'll add another constraint. My favorite story about doing this is with a young boy. He was like 18. And his parents came to ride with me, and he came. And they were all barrel racers. And I had one dressage woman that had to ride in that group. And so here she is on her lovely little horse. And this guy is whipping around the arena. And I'm like, okay, if I tell him not to do it, it's not going to happen. So I had him come over, and I put a band on his stirrups, the equiband. And his legs were still flapping. So I've never done this before. I called him over. I put 2 gold bands, my strongest bands, and attached them to the stirrups. And suddenly the legs weren't flapping. And then I called him over and said, do you mind if I do this? And he gave me permission. And I put an ace bandage on his upper arms. And now he's trotting. And then I finally gave him a strap to hold around the horse's neck with the ace bandage, and he was walking. And so without ever telling him to walk, he wound up walking because the constraints confined him in a way that in order to ride his horse, he had to discover new ideas. And that's exactly the point of all the weird little things that I'm always looking for new toy. You've seen.
Yeah.
And I'm always looking for new toys and ways to come in a novel concept to kind of hit the brain from a slightly different perspective to get that spark. And then you go, oh, and then you start seeking that because you've had a new feeling and a new experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And as someone that, I'm always trying to improve not just my riding, but also I'm trying to become a better teacher as well. So, learning from you, watching you do that, and, some like Angelo, another person I've worked with, is the same way that if the student doesn't get it, you change the approach and try something new.
It's the teacher's job to figure out how you learn and deliver the information in the way you can receive it, not make you conform to my system. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that.
Yeah.
So thank you
You're
for being
very welcome.
here.
It's been a pleasure.
Yes, it has been. And we're going to have some more resources with Wendy, so you can check out the links below for those, and also make sure to subscribe to crktrainingblog.com, and we'll let you know when Wendy's online course is going to be available.